Hi everyone. Welcome back. We're glad to have you with us today. In this story, you will hear a story about how drug addiction can affect a family and the danger it has put her husband and children in. So let's start. For most of our marriage, I thought I understood Evelyn. We met in our early 20s when life was a symphony of possibility, and she was the melody that resonated with me most. She had this spark, wild but grounded, spontaneous but caring. We'd built a life that many would envy, a cozy home, 2 children who adored their mother, and a rhythm of love that carried us through every storm. Or so I believed. The first crack appeared on a Friday night. Evelyn had always cherished our family dinners, where laughter and shared stories warmed the room as much as the food did. That evening, though, her chair sat empty. I called her phone, and the cheerful ringtone echoed from the kitchen counter. She'd forgotten it. Hours passed. The lasagna I had made, her favorite, grew cold. Our daughter, Lily, pouted, asking why Mommy wasn't home. Our son, Ben, tried to distract her with his usual antics, but even his boundless energy faltered as bedtime came and went. When Evelyn finally walked through the door, the sharp scent of cigarettes and something faintly sweet, like overripe fruit, followed her in. "Oh, Henry," she said, laughing as if we were in on some shared joke. I lost track of time. Her explanation was vague, her smile too wide. I noticed the smudged lipstick, the slightly disheveled hair. It wasn't like her to be careless. I didn't press her. Maybe I should have. The excuses began piling up after that. Work ran late. A friend needed her. The gym was offering evening classes she couldn't miss. At first, I didn't mind. We all need space, don't we? But it was hard to ignore the shift in her demeanor. Evelyn had always been warm, her affection like sunlight on a cold day. Now, that warmth was directed elsewhere, toward her phone, her new friends, and increasingly away from me and the kids. She began talking about a woman named Miranda, someone she'd met through a mutual acquaintance. Miranda, she claimed, was everything she aspired to be. Independent, free-spirited, untethered by the burdens of routine and tradition. Evelyn described her with a reverence I hadn't heard since we first talked about our children's futures. "She's just so inspiring, Henry," Evelyn said one night as we lay in bed. She stared at the ceiling, her voice light with wonder. "She makes me feel like there's more out there, you know? What's out there that you don't have here?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Evelyn turned her head toward me, her smile faint but almost pitying. "It's not about having. It's about being." The first time I met Miranda, I understood why Evelyn was drawn to her. She exuded a sort of magnetic energy that made you feel both insignificant and intrigued in her presence. Miranda was unapologetically loud, with dyed red hair and tattoos that peeked out from under her bohemian dresses. She smoked like a chimney and drank like she was trying to drown something. Miranda's laughter filled the room when Evelyn introduced us during a weekend barbecue. She slapped me on the shoulder as though we'd known each other for years. "You're a lucky guy, Henry," she said, her voice husky and teasing. "This one's got the world at her feet." I didn't miss the way Evelyn beamed under her gaze. The other friends Miranda brought into Evelyn's orbit were just as intoxicatingly chaotic. They were the kind of people who seemed to pride themselves on their ability to live on the edge, bragging about their escapades with a bravado that felt exhausting. It wasn't long before Evelyn began adopting their habits. The late nights, the impulsive decisions, the growing disinterest in anything that resembled normalcy. It was during one of those nights, when Evelyn came home well past midnight, that I first voiced my concerns. "You're out a lot these days," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as she kicked off her heels. She rolled her eyes. "Don't start, Henry. I'm just having fun." "And us? The kids?" I asked. "Where do we fit into all of this?" Evelyn sighed, exasperated. As if I were a child she had to explain something obvious to. "I'm still here, aren't I? Physically, maybe. But the woman standing before me felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face." The cracks deepened. Evelyn's absences became more frequent, her stories less believable. Once, she came home with a bruise on her arm, waving it off as an accident during some wild night out. I didn't believe her, but I didn't push. Pushing only seemed to drive her further away. The kids began to notice, too. Lily started drawing pictures where our family was missing a member. Ben, always quick to crack a joke, grew quieter, his eyes shadowed with questions he didn't know how to ask. I tried to fill the gaps Evelyn left behind. I cooked, cleaned, helped with homework, and tucked the kids into bed with stories about knights and dragons. But the truth was, I wasn't enough. Evelyn's absence was a gaping hole that no amount of bedtime tales could cover. One night, as I sat in the living room waiting for her to come home, I scrolled through social media. I didn't mean to look, but curiosity got the better of me. Miranda's page was a collage of chaos. Blurry photos from parties, cryptic posts about freedom and self-discovery, and tagged pictures that sent my stomach plummeting. There was Evelyn, holding a cocktail and laughing, her arm around a man I didn't recognize. Her eyes, once full of love and warmth, looked distant, like they were gazing into a world I could never reach. The final photo was a group shot. Miranda and her crew posed like they owned the night. Evelyn in the center, radiant and utterly transformed. It wasn't just the late nights or the new friends. It was the undeniable fact that my wife was slipping away from me, piece by piece. And I didn't know how to stop it. Evelyn's absences started as a trickle and soon became a flood. At first, she missed dinner once or twice a week, claiming work ran late or a friend needed her support. Then it was weekend plans canceled at the last minute, leaving me to manage the kids alone. I'd hear her car pull into the driveway well after midnight, her laughter echoing as she fumbled with the keys. I lost track of time, she'd say with a breezy shrug. It was hard to pinpoint the moment her carefree attitude began to curdle into recklessness. I'd catch glimpses of her phone screen, the names of people I didn't recognize lighting up her notifications. She spoke about her new friends with a fervor that left me feeling like an outsider in my own home. One evening, Evelyn came home glowing, her cheeks flushed and her voice effervescent. "You should meet these people, Henry," she said, flinging her bag onto the counter. "They're incredible. So real, you know? They live. We live too," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "What's so different about them?" She sighed, her smile slipping. "It's not the same. They don't let themselves get stuck in routines. They're free." "Free from what? Responsibilities?" She gave me a pitying look, like I was too small-minded to understand. "Free to be who they are." "Evelyn," I said carefully, "who you are as a mother and a wife. That's not a bad thing." She didn't respond. Instead, she kissed me on the cheek and disappeared upstairs. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to confront. It wasn't long before Miranda became a fixture in Evelyn's life, and by extension ours. Miranda was everything Evelyn now aspired to be: bold, unapologetic, and utterly chaotic. She swept into our home one Saturday afternoon, uninvited, her laughter filling the room before Evelyn even introduced her. "Henry, you're lucky," Miranda said, her voice dripping with a husky confidence. "Your wife is a goddess." Evelyn beamed under the praise, her smile brighter than I'd seen in weeks. Miranda stayed for hours, lounging on our couch and filling our living room with stories of her escapades. She spoke of freedom like it was a religion, of self-discovery like it was a moral imperative. "You should come out with us sometime," she said, winking at me. "Let Evelyn show you how to live a little." "I've got plenty to live for right here," I replied, gesturing toward Lily and Ben playing in the corner. Miranda laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Kids are great, but they're not everything." Evelyn didn't defend me. She didn't even look at me. The gap between us widened. Evelyn's nights out became the norm, her time at home a rarity. Even when she was with us, she wasn't really present. She'd scroll through her phone during dinner or disappear into the bedroom for long calls, leaving me to manage the kids. "Why doesn't Mommy play with us anymore?" Lily asked one night as I tucked her into bed. "She's busy, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "But she used to be busy and still play," Lily replied, her big eyes searching mine. I didn't have an answer for that. Ben, always more introspective, started acting out. His grades slipped, and he'd lash out at Lily over the smallest things. One evening, I found him sitting on the back porch, his knees drawn to his chest. "Hey, buddy," I said, sitting beside him. "What's going on?" "Is Mommy mad at us?" he asked, his voice trembling. My heart broke. "No, Ben. Mommy loves you and your sister very much. She's just going through something." It felt like a lie, but I didn't know how else to protect him from the truth. The breaking point came one Friday night. Evelyn had promised to be home early for a family dinner, but hours passed with no sign of her. I finally called her, only for it to go straight to voicemail. When she stumbled through the door close to midnight, Miranda was with her, laughing as if they'd just shared the best joke in the world. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone steady for the kids, who were thankfully asleep upstairs. "Relax, Henry," Evelyn said, brushing past me. "We were just out. You promised to be here tonight. We had plans." "Oh, come on. It's just one night," she replied, pouring herself a glass of wine. "It's not just one night, Evelyn. This has been going on for weeks." "Stop trying to control me," she snapped, her voice rising. "I'm not some prisoner here, Henry. No one's trying to imprison you," I said, struggling to stay calm. "But you have responsibilities, to me, to the kids." "Don't lecture me," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I'm allowed to have a life." Miranda smirked from the corner, taking a drag from her cigarette. "God, Henry, you sound like my ex." No wonder Evelyn needs to get out. I turned to Evelyn, desperate to find some trace of the woman I'd married. "Do you even care about us anymore?" Her silence was answer enough. That night, as I lay awake, I realized the storm wasn't coming. It was already here. Evelyn was slipping further into a world I couldn't reach, and every attempt to pull her back only pushed her farther away. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of her laughter downstairs. It felt like a ghost haunting the life we'd once shared. For the first time, I wondered if it was possible to save her, or if I'd have to save myself and the kids instead. The Evelyn I knew was slipping away, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Her laughter, once warm and infectious, now carried an edge of hysteria. Her excuses for late nights were paper-thin, her focus on anything beyond herself non-existent. I tried to reason with her, hoping there was still a part of her that remembered the life we'd built, the love we shared. But with each passing day, she drifted further, her absence more palpable even when she was standing right in front of me. It wasn't just the absences or the neglect. It was the small but telling changes that truly frightened me. Evelyn's energy shifted, becoming jittery and unpredictable. Some nights, she'd return home with wild, glassy eyes, speaking a mile a minute about things that didn't quite make sense. Other nights, she was withdrawn and sullen, barely acknowledging me or the kids. One evening, as she rummaged through her purse for her keys, a small plastic bag fell out onto the counter. I froze. Inside was a white powder, sealed and unmistakable. "Evelyn," I said carefully, picking up the bag. "What is this?" Her eyes widened for a split second before she snatched it from my hand. "None of your business," she snapped, stuffing it back into her purse. "You're using, aren't you?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "I'm not a junkie, Henry," she hissed. "It's just something to help me unwind. Everyone does it." "Not everyone," I said, my fists clenching at my sides. "Not people with kids who need them." She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Don't act like you're perfect. You're just mad because you can't control me anymore." It wasn't anger that coursed through me then. It was despair. This wasn't the woman I'd married. This wasn't the mother of my children. Her addiction, though she denied it fiercely, became impossible to ignore. Money began disappearing from our joint account. Her explanations were vague: gas, groceries, favors for friends. But they didn't add up. I started locking my wallet in the bedroom drawer at night, a precaution that felt like a betrayal but was necessary. The kids felt it too. Lily asked one evening why Mommy was always sick. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth, so I lied. "She's just tired, sweetheart." "She's been busy." Ben, older and more perceptive, didn't buy it. "She's not tired," he said, his voice flat. "She doesn't care." The breaking point came on a night when Evelyn didn't come home at all. The hours ticked by, and my calls went unanswered. Lily cried herself to sleep, and Ben sat on the couch, his jaw set in a way that made him look far older than his years. I stayed up, pacing the living room until dawn. When Evelyn finally stumbled in, reeking of sweat and smoke, Her makeup smeared. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Where were you?" I demanded, blocking her path to the stairs. "Out," she muttered, trying to push past me. "With who? Doing what?" "None of your damn business, Henry," she shouted, her voice echoing through the quiet house. "It is my business," I snapped. "You're a mother. You're my wife. Or have you forgotten that?" She stared at me, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed, a hollow, joyless sound. "Maybe you should forget it too." The next morning, I called my father. His calm, steady voice was a lifeline in the chaos. "You can't save her, Henry," he said gently. "She has to want to save herself. Your priority now is the kids." I knew he was right. That evening, I sat down with my closest friend, David, to formulate a plan. He introduced me to a lawyer, someone experienced in custody battles. "I'll fight for them," I told the lawyer during our first meeting. "I don't care what it costs." "You'll need evidence," she said. "Her behavior, her absences, anything that shows neglect or endangerment." Over the next week, I began documenting everything. Her missed nights, her erratic behavior, the arguments. It felt invasive, but I had no choice. The kids' safety depended on it. One night, Evelyn caught me taking photos of empty bottles left on the kitchen counter. "What the hell are you doing?" she demanded, snatching the phone from my hand. "Protecting the kids," I said, my voice steady. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she might throw the phone at me. Instead, she sneered. "You think you're the hero, don't you? Newsflash, Henry, you're just as broken as I am." The confrontation I'd been dreading finally came on a Saturday. Evelyn was about to leave for another night out when I stopped her at the door. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. "Not now, Henry," she replied, brushing past me. "Yes, now." She turned, her eyes flashing with irritation. "What?" "I'm filing for divorce," I said, each word feeling heavier than the last. For a moment, she froze. Then she laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "Good luck with that," she said. "You'll regret it." But as the door slammed behind her, I felt a strange sense of relief. I knew the battle ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, I also knew that I could win. The moment I realized Evelyn's choices were more than a strain on our marriage was the day I came home to find the kids alone in the house. The sight of Lily curled up on the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit and crying, shattered something inside me. Ben sat beside her, his arms crossed protectively. "Where's Mommy?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. "She said she'd be back," Ben replied, his voice steady but tight with anger. "How long ago?" He shrugged. "A while." I didn't ask more. I scooped Lily into my arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead as I promised everything would be okay. I wasn't sure it would be, but I needed her to believe it. Evelyn returned 2 hours later, stumbling through the door with her sunglasses still perched on her nose, even though the sun had long set. She muttered something about losing track of time, brushing past me as if nothing had happened. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low but firm. "Not now, Henry," she snapped, kicking off her shoes. "Yes, now." She stopped, turning to face me with an exaggerated sigh. "What's your problem?" "My problem?" I repeated, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You left our kids alone. For hours." "They're fine," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "They're not fine," I yelled, my anger breaking through. "They were scared, Evelyn. They didn't know if you were coming back." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," she said, rolling her eyes. "Ben can handle it. He's mature for his age." "He's 10, I shouted. "And Lily is 7. They're not supposed to handle being abandoned by their mother." Her face darkened, and she stormed past me without another word. The door to our bedroom slammed shut behind her, leaving me standing alone in the hallway, my fists clenched at my sides. The incidents started piling up. Evelyn forgot to pick Ben up from school one afternoon, leaving him stranded until the office staff called me. Another day, I came home to find Lily crying in the backyard because Evelyn had promised to take her to the park and never followed through. When I confronted her, she always had an excuse. Work ran late. Miranda needed me. I just lost track of time. But the worst was the night I found her stumbling through the house, her pupils dilated and her movements erratic. She laughed at nothing, slurring her words as she tried to explain where she'd been. "What's wrong with you?" I asked, grabbing her by the shoulders to steady her. She pushed me away, glaring. "Don't touch me, Henry. You're high, aren't you?" Her laughter was sharp and cold. "Don't be ridiculous." But her hands shook as she reached for her bag, and when a small plastic vial fell out, I felt the last shred of hope dissolve. "This is what you've been doing?" I asked, holding up the vial. "Give me that," she snapped, snatching it from my hand. "You're using Evelyn," I said, my voice trembling. "You're a mother, and you're doing this?" "Everyone does it," she said, her tone defensive. "It's just a little fun. Don't be so uptight." "This isn't fun, Evelyn. It's dangerous." She didn't respond. Instead, she shoved past me, muttering under her breath as she disappeared into the bedroom. The final straw came on a Saturday. Evelyn had promised to take the kids to the park while I ran errands, but when she returned hours later, Lily was crying, and Ben looked furious. "What happened?" I asked as they came inside. "We were hungry," Lily said, her voice small. "Mommy forgot snacks." I turned to Evelyn, who was rummaging through her bag as though nothing was wrong. "You didn't feed them?" "I forgot, okay," she snapped. "You forgot to feed your kids?" I shouted. "What is wrong with you?" "Don't yell at me," she screamed, her face red. "I'm doing my best." "No, you're not," I said, my voice breaking. "You're not even trying." She glared at me for a long moment before grabbing her keys and storming out. That night, I filed for emergency custody. My lawyer assured me I had a strong case, but the process would be grueling. When Evelyn was served, she didn't seem surprised. "So, this is how it's going to be?" she asked, her voice icy. "It's not about you," I said. "It's about them." She laughed bitterly. "Keep telling yourself that, Henry." But I didn't need to convince myself. I knew the truth. That night, as I tucked the kids in a bed, Ben looked up at me with wide, tired eyes. "Are we going to be okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said, squeezing his hand. "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Evelyn's resistance to reality was almost admirable in its stubbornness. Even as the custody papers sat on the kitchen counter, untouched but undeniable, she carried on as though nothing had changed. It was a twisted game to her, one where the stakes were invisible, or perhaps she simply refused to see them. The tension between us thickened to the point of suffocation. Our once lively home had become a battlefield of icy silence punctuated by terse words and cold glares. The kids, caught in the crossfire, grew quieter with each passing day. It was a Wednesday evening when everything came to a head. Evelyn was supposed to take Lily to her dance class while I helped Ben with his school project. Instead, she showed up 2 hours late, her makeup smeared, and her breath reeking of alcohol. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm for the kids' sake. "Out," she replied, kicking off her heels. "Out where?" "Does it matter?" she snapped, glaring at me like I was the one in the wrong. Lily's eyes brimmed with tears. "Mommy, you promised," she whispered. Evelyn barely glanced at her. "I'll take you next time, sweetheart." "There won't be a next time," I said, my anger finally boiling over. "Evelyn, you're done. I'm filing for sole custody." Her laugh was sharp and bitter, the sound of someone who thought they'd already won. "Good luck with that," she said, grabbing a glass from the cabinet and pouring herself a drink. "This isn't a joke, Evelyn," I said, stepping closer. "You put them at risk too many times. You've abandoned them, neglected them, and I won't let it happen again." She set her glass down with a loud clink, her eyes narrowing. "And what are you going to tell the court, Henry? That you're perfect? That you've never made a mistake?" "This isn't about me," I said firmly. "It's about the kids. And you've failed them." Her face twisted into something unrecognizable, a mask of rage and disbelief. "You're unbelievable," she spat. "You think you're so much better than me?" "I think I'm the only one trying to keep this family from falling apart," I shot back. "And I won't let you drag us down any further." The next morning, Evelyn was gone. Her side of the closet was empty, her toiletries missing from the bathroom counter. I didn't call her. I didn't need to. She showed up 2 days later, disheveled and frantic. "You can't take them from me," she said, standing in the doorway with trembling hands. "I didn't take them," I replied. "You left." Her tears came suddenly, a flood of raw emotion that might have moved me if it hadn't come so late. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she sobbed. "I never wanted it to be like this." "Then why didn't you stop?" I asked, my voice breaking. She didn't answer. Instead, she sank to the floor, her shoulders shaking with the weight of her tears. The court hearing came faster than I expected, a whirlwind of legal jargon and pointed accusations. Evelyn's lawyer painted her as a struggling mother who deserved another chance. My lawyer countered with the mountain of evidence I'd collected, the missed pickups, the erratic behavior, the texts, and the kids' testimony. Evelyn barely looked at me during the proceedings. When she spoke, her voice was trembling and uncertain, a shadow of the woman I'd once known. In the end, the court granted me temporary full custody. Evelyn was allowed supervised visitation, contingent on her attending therapy and proving she could stay sober. That night, as I sat on the couch with the kids curled up beside me, the weight of it all finally hit me. I had won the battle, but the war had left scars that would take years to heal. "Are we safe now, Dad?" Ben asked, his voice small but hopeful. "Yes," I said, pulling him close. "You're safe. I promise." For the first time in what felt like forever, I believed it. Winning custody of the kids brought a sense of relief, but it was only the beginning of the battle. Life didn't return to normal overnight. The house felt emptier without Evelyn's presence, even though her chaos had been a source of constant tension. The kids were adjusting in their own ways. Lily became clingy, constantly seeking reassurance. She'd hold my hand tighter than ever and ask repeatedly if I'd be there when she woke up. Ben, on the other hand, withdrew. He buried himself in books and video games, his laughter quieter and more rare. I leaned heavily on my father and my closest friend, David, both of whom had supported me unwaveringly through the divorce. They helped me find my footing when it felt like the world had shifted beneath me. "You're doing the right thing," my dad said one evening as he helped me paint the kids' bedrooms. A small change to make the house feel like ours instead of a reminder of the life we'd lost. "It's not easy, but you're putting them first. That's what matters." I nodded, but the weight of responsibility still pressed heavily on my chest. Evelyn's supervised visitations were an emotional minefield. The court-appointed supervisor had a no-nonsense attitude, ensuring that every interaction stayed within strict boundaries. Evelyn tried her best to seem composed and attentive, but the cracks in her facade were obvious. The first visit was awkward. Evelyn brought gifts for the kids, brightly wrapped packages that only seemed to highlight her absence. "Mommy!" Lily cried, running to her. Ben hung back, his arms crossed. "Why are you giving us stuff now?" he asked bluntly. Evelyn's smile faltered. "I just wanted to bring you something special," she said. Ben wasn't satisfied. "We don't need stuff. We needed you." The words hung in the air, cutting through the room like a knife. The next few weeks were a blur of therapy sessions, school meetings, and late-night planning. I'd taken a leave of absence from work to focus on the kids, pouring all my energy into making them feel safe and loved. Lily's therapist suggested art therapy, so I bought a stack of sketch pads and watercolors. Every evening, we sat at the dining table, painting side by side. She painted rainbows and flowers, but sometimes her brushstrokes were heavy, her pictures chaotic swirls of black and gray. "Is this the storm?" I asked one night, pointing to her darker painting. She nodded. "It's how I feel when Mommy doesn't come home." I pulled her close, my heart breaking anew. "The storm's over now, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." Ben was harder to reach. He refused therapy outright, insisting he didn't need to talk to anyone. Instead, he poured his energy into building elaborate Lego creations, his focus intense. "Want to tell me about this one?" I asked one evening, pointing to a towering castle he'd spent hours assembling. "It's got walls," he said simply. "Why walls?" "To keep people out," he replied, his tone flat. I sat beside him, choosing my words carefully. "You know, walls can keep people out, but they can also trap you inside." He looked at me for a long moment, then shrugged. "Maybe." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Evelyn's attempts to repair her relationship with the kids were halting and inconsistent. She showed up late to one visitation, and on another, she seemed distracted, her eyes darting around the room. "Are you still using?" I asked her bluntly after one visit. Her face hardened. No, she said, her voice defensive. I'm clean. Then act like it. I said, my patience worn thin. They need stability, Evelyn. If you can't give them that, you're only going to hurt them more. She didn't respond, but the look in her eyes told me she knew I was right. With each passing week, the kids began to smile more. The laughter that had once been drowned out by tension and fear slowly returned. We fell into a routine. School drop-offs and pickups, homework at the kitchen table, family movie nights on Fridays. One evening, as we watched a cartoon Lily had chosen, Ben turned to me and said, "It's better now." Without her. His words stung, even though I knew they came from a place of truth. Evelyn's absence loomed large in our lives, but I made a conscious effort not to let bitterness consume me. Instead, I focused on building something new, something better. I joined a local support group for single parents, a mix of people who understood the unique challenges I faced. Talking to them reminded me I wasn't alone, that others had rebuilt their lives from the ashes of broken relationships. One of the parents, a woman named Rachel, shared her own story of leaving a toxic marriage and starting over. "You don't have to fix everything overnight," she said one evening after a meeting. "Just take it one day at a time." Her words stuck with me. Months passed, and Evelyn's visits grew less frequent. The court ordered her to attend therapy and drug counseling, but she missed appointments, claiming work conflicts or illness. The kids stopped asking about her as much, their questions fewer and farther between. Lily still painted storms sometimes, but more often, her pictures were sunny skies and happy stick figures. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she asked, "Are you happy, Daddy?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think you smile more now," she said, her voice sleepy but sure. I kissed her forehead, the weight on my chest lifting ever so slightly. "I think I do too." The battle for stability was far from over, but the victories, no matter how small, were beginning to add up. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were moving forward. And for the first time, I dared to believe that the life I was building, though different from what I'd imagined, might be enough. Life after Evelyn wasn't easy, but it was ours. The silence she left behind was deafening at first, a reminder of the chaos that used to fill every corner of our home. But slowly, we learned to live with it. The mornings became brighter without rushed arguments or forgotten responsibilities. The kids and I found a rhythm. Breakfast together, laughter over spilled cereal, and a quick race to the car to make it to school on time. These small rituals, insignificant before, became the foundation of our new normal. Evelyn's presence dwindled over time. Her supervised visits became sporadic, each one less hopeful than the last. On her final visit, she brought a bouquet of wildflowers for Lily and a new book for Ben. She tried to engage with them, but they were distant, their smiles polite but guarded. As the hour ended, Evelyn pulled me aside. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "I'm trying, Henry," she said, her voice trembling. "I hope you are," I replied, though my tone was devoid of the hope I once carried for her. "But the kids can't wait forever. They need consistency." She nodded, tears brimming but unshed. "Take care of them." Her words sounded final, and as I watched her leave, I wondered if she knew this was her last chance slipping through her fingers. The kids adjusted to life without their mother better than I expected. Lily found joy in her art, her paintings growing brighter with every stroke. Her therapist told me the shift was a good sign. "She feels safe now," the therapist said. Ben, still reluctant to talk about his feelings, began to open up in small ways. One evening, as we played a board game, he blurted out, "I don't hate her, you know." "I know," I said gently. "But I don't miss her either," he added, his voice soft. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "It's okay to feel both." I started focusing on myself, too. With encouragement from my support group, I began running again, something I hadn't done since my 20s. The simple act of moving forward, one step at a time, mirrored my emotional journey. I found new connections as well. Rachel, the single mother from the group, became a steady presence in my life. Our conversations were easy, filled with shared experiences and quiet understanding. One evening, as we walked through the park with our kids, she said, "You're doing a great job, Henry." Her words, simple as they were, stayed with me. Months turned into a year. The kids thrived in school, their laughter filling the house again. Lily's paintings lined the walls, and Ben's Lego creations grew more elaborate by the day. One night, as I tucked them into bed, Lily whispered, "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too," I said, brushing a kiss on her forehead. Ben, half asleep, murmured, "You're the best, Dad." As I turned off the light and closed their door, I stood in the hallway, letting the moment sink in. For the first time in years, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter. We were okay. We were finally okay. The past has a way of lingering, like a shadow that stretches long and silent behind you. Even as the kids and I moved forward, there were moments when memories of Evelyn crept back in. Some were gentle, a smell, a song, a phrase she used to say. Others hit like a punch to the gut, unexpected and sharp. I'd see her in Lily's determined smile or Ben's sarcastic quips. There were days when they asked questions I wasn't sure how to answer. "Do you think Mommy's happy now?" Lily asked one evening as we painted together. I paused, considering my words. "I hope she's trying to be," I said. Lily tilted her head, studying me. "Are you mad at her?" I admitted. "But being mad doesn't help us now. We're focusing on us, remember?" She nodded, her tiny hands working on a rainbow. "I think she should paint too. It helps." Evelyn's sporadic attempts to reach out didn't go unnoticed. I'd get the occasional text, short, stilted messages asking about the kids or offering apologies I didn't know how to respond to. One day, she sent a picture of a certificate from a rehab program, her name printed neatly at the top. "I'm trying," the accompanying message read. I didn't reply. I wasn't sure if it was kindness or self-preservation, but I didn't feel the need to engage. A year after the divorce was finalized, Evelyn sent a letter addressed to the kids. Inside were 2 cards, one for Ben and one for Lily. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were heartfelt. "I'm sorry I wasn't the mom you needed," one card read, "but I'll always love you." Lily tucked her card into her art drawer, while Ben left his on the dining table, unopened. I didn't push him. Healing doesn't follow a straight path, and I knew he'd confront his feelings in his own time. As the kids grew stronger, so did I. I focused on my career again, taking on new challenges and finding satisfaction in my work. I started writing, chronicling my journey not just for myself, but for others who might be facing similar battles. Rachel became a steady presence in our lives. What started as shared coffee breaks after group meetings turned into walks in the park and dinners with our kids. She understood the weight of my past without asking for explanations, and in her quiet way, she helped me see that rebuilding wasn't just possible, it was worth it. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the kids play, she asked, "Do you ever think about forgiving her?" I didn't answer immediately. The word forgiveness felt heavy, complicated. "Maybe," I said finally. "Not for her, but for me." The echoes of Evelyn's choices never fully disappeared, but they grew quieter with time. The memories were there, but they no longer controlled me. One day, as I watched Lily and Ben laugh together over a silly movie, I realized the shadow of the past had finally given way to the light of what we'd built. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living, and that I knew was the greatest victory of all.